It is strange how clearly you can see a person's character when they think no one important is watching. You can learn more about someone in the moments they have all the freedom to be careful or careless than in any polished version of themselves they present when the stakes feel high, and nothing exposes that truth faster than how they treat the people who have no power over them at all. Before we continue, a quick note. Many of you watch our videos but haven't subscribed yet. So please subscribe to our channel Restwise and join our growing community. We'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's amazing to see how connected we all are. If you enjoy relaxing with philosophy, psychology, and science while drifting into sleep, give this video a like and stay with us on the journey. Now, let's get back to the video. There is a moment that hits you the first time you notice it. You are standing somewhere simple, maybe in a lobby or a waiting room or a checkout line, and you watch someone switch personalities depending on who they are talking to. They glow up for the boss, the friend they want approval from, the person they are trying to impress. But the tone changes when they address the cleaner, the server, the cashier, the stranger who cannot offer them anything. Their voice drops cold. Their patience evaporates. Their kindness becomes conditional. And you realize you are not watching a bad day or a small slip. You are watching their real face. It shocks you because most people are not openly cruel. Their behavior comes wrapped in excuses. They are tired. They are stressed. They are just in a hurry. But human psychology has a very specific pattern here. When the brain does not feel socially threatened, it stops performing. That means the mask comes off around people they believe they do not need. Researchers in social dynamics describe this as a low-incentive environment. When there is nothing to gain, the brain does not spend energy on self-control. So the way someone treats the powerless is not random. It is the baseline of who they are when they think it does not matter. And you know that feeling yourself. You have likely had moments when you realized someone who acted kind around you showed a completely different version around someone else. Maybe there was a person you trusted who was warm to you but dismissive to the waiter. Or someone who preached kindness but mocked the person who could not defend themselves. It unsettles you because your instincts understand that if they can behave like that with someone else, they can behave like that with you, the moment you no longer serve a purpose. This is where the validation hits. You are not overthinking it. You are not being dramatic for noticing it. Your mind is designed to pick up on tiny signals of threat or safety. When you see someone demean the powerless, your brain logs it as a warning. That is because genuine empathy does not discriminate. If someone respects only the people they want something from, that is transactional behavior, not moral behavior. And you have every right to trust your reaction to it. Think about the times you were in the powerless position. Maybe you were the unpaid intern. Maybe you were the new employee who did not know how things worked yet. Maybe you were the person asking for help when you already felt small. You remember exactly who made you feel smaller and who made you feel human. Those memories stay sharp because when you have no power, kindness becomes oxygen and cruelty becomes a weight you carry long after the moment ends. It is also why leaders who inspire loyalty are the ones who remember the names of the people no one else notices. It is why real friends are the ones who treat the stranger with the same respect they give their inner circle. And it is why the most trusted people are the ones who stay consistent in every direction. not only upward. There is a quiet strength in watching how people behave when they think it will never get back to you. It gives you clarity without confrontation. It shows you who is safe to invest in and who is only performing. And once you see that pattern clearly, it becomes harder for anyone to fake goodness in front of you. Because the truth is simple. Power does not corrupt as often as it reveals. And how someone treats the powerless tells you exactly where their empathy ends and where their ego begins. That realization changes how you move through the world. It sharpens your intuition. It guides your choices. And it teaches you that someone who cannot offer you anything material might still offer you, the most important thing of all, a clean reflection of who you are becoming. Reactions to others' success. It is wild how revealing it is to watch someone react when another person wins. Not when they win, not when things go their way, but when the spotlight swings in a direction that is not theirs. You learn a lot about people in those quiet seconds when someone else gets the praise, the opportunity, the recognition, or the moment they secretly hoped would land in their own lap. The truth slips out fast when they are not the center of attention. Some people light up with you, and it feels real. You can feel the support in their reaction, the ease in their body language, the calm in their voice. But others tense up, give forced congratulations, or go silent because something inside them just cannot handle seeing someone else rise. And the shocking part is this: it is rarely about jealousy the way we usually define it. It is deeper and more unconscious than that. Human psychology has a mechanism called social comparison. The brain automatically measures where we stand relative to others, and when someone around us levels up, it can trigger a threat signal. Not a physical threat, but a status threat. It makes certain people feel smaller without anyone doing anything to them. That is why you see reactions that seem disproportionate. Someone gets a promotion and a friend suddenly becomes distant. Someone hits a personal milestone and a family member finds a way to minimize it. Someone finally achieves something they worked for, and the response is a sarcastic comment or a heavy silence. It hits you because in those moments you think you are sharing joy, but the other person feels like they are losing something, even if nothing was taken from them. And you are not wrong for noticing it. Your mind is wired to pick up emotional shifts, especially the subtle ones. When someone cares about you, your wins feel like wins for them too. They may still feel a little envy, because that is normal, but it does not twist into resentment. It does not turn into comparison. Envy becomes admiration when maturity is present. Envy becomes hostility when insecurity is driving the car. You might think back to times in your life when you achieved something and it made you feel good for about 10 seconds until you looked at the reactions around you. Maybe someone you thought would be proud gave a lukewarm response. Maybe they changed the subject fast. Maybe they made it about themselves. And deep down you knew something was off. You felt that sting because human beings are social creatures and celebration feels incomplete when the people around you cannot join in. And the pattern works both ways. You also remember who hyped you up without hesitation, who smiled without faking it, who supported you in a way that made you feel larger, not smaller. Those reactions feel pure because they come from a place of abundance, not fear. People who are secure in their own path do not crumble when someone else succeeds. They see it as proof that progress is possible. There is a reason psychologists say that true self-confidence is revealed in how you respond to others' gains. If someone gets defensive, dismissive, or distant, it is rarely because they dislike you. It is because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your forward motion holds up a mirror they are not ready to look into. It challenges their excuses, their delays, and their fear of taking risks. So rather than deal with those feelings, they project them onto you. Understanding this does not make their reaction hurt less, but it helps you see what is yours to carry and what is not. Someone else struggling with their self-worth is not your responsibility, and their discomfort should never make you shrink yourself. You do not need to dim your wins to protect someone who refuses to grow. But here is the part that stays with you. Reactions to others' success eventually expose the people you can keep close and the people you need distance from. Because when someone is genuinely for you, you feel it in your victories and in your losses, and when they are not, their energy betrays them the moment life gives you something good. And the crazy thing is, once you start paying attention to this pattern, you cannot unsee it. You start reading the room differently, not with suspicion, but with clarity. You realize that success does not just show you what you are capable of. It also shows you who is truly standing beside you, how they speak when you're not there. There is something unsettling about realizing that the most honest version of your relationships exists in conversations you will never hear. The way people talk when you are not in the room carries a truth that never fully shows up face to face. And you can feel this long before you get any proof. You sense it in the pauses, the energy shifts, the way certain people look at you a second too long, like they are recalibrating what they think they know about you. Most people present a polished front when you are there. They choose kinder words. They hold back judgments. They soften their tone. But the real story happens once you walk away and they no longer feel the need to manage your reaction. That is when their loyalty or their insecurity or their resentment shows itself without disguise. It shocks you the first time you realize someone you trusted speaks about you differently when you are gone. Not necessarily in a dramatic, explosive way. Sometimes it is something small, a dismissive comment, a complaint delivered with just a little too much enthusiasm, a joke that lands a little too easily. And those tiny moments reveal a lot more than any grand insult ever could. Psychologists call this the honesty gap, the space between how we present ourselves publicly and how we actually feel privately. Everyone has one, but the size of that gap tells you everything about someone's integrity. When the gap is small, the person is consistent. When the gap is wide, the person is performing. And when you think about it, the people you respect most probably have the smallest gap. They speak the same way about you behind your back as they do to your face. Their words stay steady even when you are not there to reward or punish them. The painful part is that your brain instinctively picks up when something is off. Humans are wired to track social safety, so when people treat you differently depending on whether you are present, your mind notices the inconsistencies before you even understand them. Maybe you feel oddly drained after hanging out with a specific friend. Maybe you notice someone avoids direct praise but throws indirect criticism when they are in a group. Maybe someone keeps sharing stories that make you look a little less credible, a little less accomplished, a little less respected. Those patterns are not accidents. They are attempts to shape how others see you without you having the chance to defend yourself. But there is validation in this too. If you have ever wondered whether you are being paranoid for sensing something, you are not. Your instincts are reading subtle cues. When people talk negatively about you behind your back, it is rarely about you. It is often about what they feel threatened by. Social behavior researchers explain that when someone feels insecure around another person, they try to bring that person down indirectly to level themselves emotionally. It is a coping mechanism for internal discomfort, not a reflection of your actual value. At the same time, you can probably recall the rare people who defend you when you are not there. Someone who turns the conversation when others start gossiping. Someone who gives you credit when you have no idea they even thought about it. Someone who protects your reputation like it is connected to their own sense of honor. Those moments often reach you secondhand, but when they do, you remember them for years. Because real loyalty is not loud, it is consistent. And consistency is something you cannot fake behind closed doors. This understanding changes you. It makes you more deliberate about who you confide in and who you keep at a distance. It makes you judge people less by how warmly they greet you and more by how they treat your absence. The freedom in this is that you no longer feel the need to chase approval. You learn to value the ones who speak with the same respect in every room. You learn to stop giving your trust to people who only honor you when they need something. And the truth is simple but powerful. The version of you that people talk about when you are not there is the version they believe is real. That is why paying attention to this pattern saves you from investing in the wrong hearts. Once you know who speaks with honesty in your absence, you know exactly who deserves a place in your presence. Patience in small moments. It is strange how much a person reveals in the tiny moments they think no one is analyzing. Not the big dramatic situations where everyone expects patience, but the small everyday moments when things move slower than they want, and they have a choice to either breathe or snap. Those little pauses tell you exactly how someone handles life, pressure, and the people around them. Think about how someone acts when the elevator takes too long, or when the person in front of them at the counter needs an extra few seconds, or when a child is learning something new and fumbles a bit. These moments seem insignificant, but they quietly expose a pattern. You start to notice who keeps their calm and who leaks irritation the instant the world stops catering to them. And it hits you because patience is never about time. It is about emotional control. It is about whether someone has learned how to manage the space between frustration and reaction. The shock comes when you realize how many people cannot handle that space at all. A tiny inconvenience sends them spiraling. A short delay makes them snap at someone who has nothing to do with the situation. A moment that requires softness brings out their harshest tone. And what is even more unsettling is that those reactions are rarely about the moment itself. Psychologists explain that impatience is often a spillover of unprocessed stress. When someone has not dealt with their internal tension, it pours out in the easiest direction, usually toward the smallest target. That is why someone can seem perfectly fine 1 second and then completely unravel the next over something trivial. And here is where you might feel a sense of recognition. Maybe you have been around someone whose irritation felt like walking on thin ice. You never knew when a small slip would trigger a sharp comment or a heavy sigh meant to remind you that you were moving too slowly for their preference. Small moments with impatient people feel bigger than they need to be. Your stomach tightens. Your mind speeds up. You start bending yourself just to avoid being the next thing they snap at. and that reaction is completely valid. Your brain registers impatience as a threat because it signals unpredictability. Humans feel safest around people who stay steady even when they are uncomfortable. On the other hand, you have likely met people who make patience look effortless. Not because they never feel annoyed, but because they have learned to pause before reacting. They give the world and the people in it a moment to be human. They understand that the universe does not operate on personal convenience. Their calm presence makes small moments feel lighter, safer, more grounded. And it is no coincidence that these people tend to be the ones others trust easily. Patience in small moments reveals emotional maturity. It shows who has done the inner work to manage their impulses instead of making their impulses someone else's problem. It shows who can handle discomfort without needing someone to blame, and it shows who understands that tiny frustrations are not worth damaging relationships over. You might think back to times when someone was patient with you. Maybe you were learning a task, talking through something slowly, or dealing with a moment of confusion. The person who allowed you space to figure it out gave you more than patience. They gave you dignity. They made you feel capable. Their calm presence steadied you instead of pressuring you. And those memories stick because patience is not passive. It is an active form of care. But there is another layer to this that people often overlook. How patient someone is in small moments also predicts how they will handle big ones. If someone loses their composure over a slow barista, how will they behave when life throws real challenges at them? If they cannot manage a minor delay, how will they handle real conflict? Patterns scale. Small moments are previews of the character behind the curtain. And once you start paying attention to this, you cannot unsee it. You begin to understand that patience is one of the clearest signs of emotional safety. It shows you who can regulate themselves, who respects your pace, and who is not secretly waiting for an excuse to unload stress onto the nearest person. Patience in small moments is not a minor trait. It is a window into who someone really is when the world is not going their way. And when you learn to read that window, you learn exactly who deserves a seat in your life and who needs to stay at a distance. Handling private disagreements. There is a moment in every close relationship that quietly decides its future. It does not happen during the happy days or the easy conversations. It happens the first time you disagree in private. No audience, no pressure to perform. Just you, the other person, and the truth about how they handle conflict when no one is watching. Private disagreements reveal a level of character that public behavior can never touch. Some people stay calm until the door closes. Then their tone sharpens. Their patience evaporates. They start defending their ego instead of defending the relationship. And it shocks you because you realize they were never calm. They were contained. Contained for the sake of appearances. Contained because they thought they needed to be. But private conflict gives them permission to let their guard down. And what comes out is not curiosity or understanding. It is blame. It is control. It is resentment they were holding in for longer than you knew. The thing about conflict is that the human brain goes into protection mode fast. Psychology calls it threat activation. When someone feels challenged, even gently, their brain behaves as if they are being attacked. That is why some people shut down. Some people get louder. Some people twist your words. Some people turn a simple misunderstanding into a survival match. They are not fighting you. They are fighting their own fear of being wrong, embarrassed, or exposed. Private disagreements pull that fear to the surface, but your reaction to this is valid. When someone is unsafe during conflict, your body registers it instantly. Your heart rate changes. You start choosing your words like you are navigating a minefield. You think about what to say before you say it, not out of respect, but out of self-protection. That is not what a healthy disagreement feels like. Healthy conflict has tension, sure, but it does not have fear. It does not have punishment. It does not have the silent threat that if you speak too honestly, the relationship will suffer. And you know this because you have also been in disagreements that felt completely different. Someone listened. Someone stayed steady. Someone said they disagreed without making you feel stupid for seeing things differently. They asked questions instead of assuming the worst. They explained their feelings without turning yours into ammunition. Those moments make you exhale because they show you that disagreement does not have to be destructive. It can be revealing in the best way. It can strengthen the bond rather than break it. There is a psychological reason for this too. When two people can disagree without attacking each other, they are demonstrating secure attachment. This means their sense of self is not threatened by conflict. They do not need to win to feel whole. They do not need to raise their voice to feel heard. They do not need to punish you to protect their pride. Private disagreements become a space for alignment instead of a battlefield for dominance. Think about the times in your life when a disagreement escalated simply because the other person refused to hear you. Maybe they cut you off mid-sentence. Maybe they twisted what you said into something harsher. Maybe they brought up old mistakes that had nothing to do with the moment. Those behaviors come from people who think conflict means danger, and when someone thinks danger is present, they attack or retreat. Either way, you lose connection. Now think about the rare times someone held the conversation like it mattered. They waited for you to finish your thought. They asked if they understood correctly. They admitted when they misinterpreted something. They stayed present even when emotions rose. Those moments reveal emotional maturity because staying grounded during conflict requires self-awareness, humility, and restraint. These are not small qualities. They are the core of every strong relationship. Private disagreements also expose who values the relationship more than their pride. Anyone can be kind when everything is smooth. Anyone can look patient in front of others. But the person who respects you in private, especially when tensions rise, is showing you a deeper truth. They are showing you that they care more about repairing than winning. And once you start paying attention to this, you stop being impressed by charm and start being impressed by emotional stability. You begin to choose the people who can sit with discomfort without turning it into destruction. You choose the ones who communicate instead of compete. The ones who want clarity instead of victory. The ones who fight for the connection rather than for control. Because the way someone handles a private disagreement is not about the argument itself. It is about who they become when everything comfortable is stripped away. And when you learn to see that, you learn exactly who you can build with and who you need to let go. Treatment of service workers. There is a certain clarity that hits you the moment you watch how someone interacts with a person who is simply doing their job. Not a glamorous job, not a job that gives them status. Just the everyday work that keeps society moving, but rarely gets acknowledged. If you ever want to see a person's true character, pay attention to how they treat the people who serve them in small ways. The workers at the counter, The ones delivering food, the cleaners, the cashiers, the people whose kindness is expected but whose dignity is often ignored. You notice it fast once you start paying attention. Some people speak with warmth, respect, and basic human decency no matter who they are talking to. But others switch the moment they think power is in their favor. They get shorter with their words. Their voice tightens. Their patience thins. You can feel it in the room when someone believes that being served gives them permission to treat another person as background noise. And it hits you because that shift does not reveal how they feel about service work. It reveals how they view people they assume they can dismiss without consequence. The shock comes from how subtle it can be. Most people are not openly cruel. It is in the sigh that is a little too heavy. The demand spoken instead of a request. The refusal to make eye contact because acknowledging the person would require humility. These tiny moments expose a deep truth that psychology explains well. When a person feels superior in a social interaction, their empathy often lowers automatically. The brain relaxes its moral guard when it perceives itself as the higher status figure. It is not always intentional, but it is always revealing. And you have felt this imbalance yourself. Think about the times you have been in the powerless position. Maybe you were working a job where customers acted like your role defined your worth. Maybe you have been spoken to like you were replaceable. Maybe you swallowed your frustration because you needed the paycheck more than the argument. You remember that feeling because it sits in your chest long after the shift ends. When someone treats you like you are less than human, a part of you starts carrying that memory as proof that some people only show respect when they think the other person is useful. Your reaction to witnessing this behavior is valid. The discomfort that rises in you when you watch someone belittle a service worker is your mind recognizing a character flaw. Humans instinctively track fairness. When someone abuses even a tiny bit of social power, your brain reads it as a form of emotional danger. If they feel entitled to treat a stranger that way, imagine how they might treat you the moment you cannot give them what they want. On the flip side, the people who treat service workers with patience and respect stand out immediately. They say thank you without being prompted. They speak like they are talking to an equal. They see the human being behind the task. Those moments feel refreshing because they are genuine. These people are not performing kindness for applause. They treat every person with the same level of dignity because that is their baseline, not their performance mode. There is a deeper reason this matters. The way someone treats service workers reveals how they navigate power. Some people only know how to be kind when the stakes are high or when they think niceness will benefit them. Others are kind because it is built into how they see the world. When someone respects those who have nothing to offer them, it shows a level of emotional maturity and groundedness that cannot be faked. You might remember someone in your life who surprised you with how gracious they were to everyone around them. Their kindness was consistent. You probably also remember someone who shocked you with how quickly they turned condescending the moment a worker made a small mistake. These moments stick with you because they tell you who you can trust. The person who is respectful to the worker is the person who will respect you even when you are not useful to them. Once you start noticing this pattern, it becomes one of the clearest filters for who belongs in your life. Because how someone treats service workers is never just about that interaction. It is a window into how they see humanity. And the people who honor others at their most overlooked moments are the ones who will honor you when you are at your most vulnerable. Keeping small promises. There is something almost invisible about small promises, and maybe that is why they reveal so much. They are tiny commitments. Little agreements. Moments where someone says they will do something that barely seems to matter. They will call you back. They will send that link. They will show up on time. They will help with something quick. These are not big vows or dramatic declarations. They are simple acts of follow-through. And yet the way someone handles these tiny commitments often tells you more about their character than anything grand they could ever say. At first, you do not really think about it. Someone forgets something small. No big deal. Life is busy. Everyone slips. But then it happens again, and it starts to hit you that the promise was not the point. What mattered was whether they respected you enough to remember what they said. Small promises are not about the task. They are about the presence of mind, the intention, the care behind the action. And when someone treats their word like a suggestion instead of a commitment, it slowly erodes trust in a way that is almost too subtle to notice until you already feel the damage. The shock comes when you realize how much these little moments stack up in your emotional world. Psychology has a principle called micro-trust. It describes the way the human brain builds or breaks trust from tiny interactions, not big dramatic events. Your mind keeps a quiet scoreboard, not out of pettiness, but out of self-protection. When people follow through consistently, your brain relaxes. You feel safe. When they break small promises often, your brain stays alert because inconsistency signals unpredictability. Your instincts pick up on that threat long before your logic does. And you might feel this deeply because you have lived both sides of it. You know exactly how it feels when someone says they will do something simple and they actually do it. They text when they said they would. They follow up. They remember the date. They keep the commitment even when they easily could have forgotten. Those people make the world feel more dependable. Their reliability makes you breathe easier because you know their word is real, not decoration. But you also know the other feeling. When someone says they will do something and you already know they will not. You do not get angry anymore because your expectations quietly adjusted. A part of you stops believing what they say even when you nod along. And that internal shift is important. When you stop trusting small promises, the relationship loses its anchor. You start carrying the emotional weight they drop. You remind them. You compensate for their forgetfulness. You lower your standards. And eventually, without even meaning to, you distance yourself. Your reaction is valid. Keeping small promises shows discipline, respect, and emotional maturity. Breaking them casually shows something too. It shows someone who speaks faster than they think, someone who commits out of convenience instead of intention, someone who does not understand that reliability is not built in big moments but in the tiny, repetitive actions that seem insignificant. Think about a time when someone followed through on something small and it surprised you in the best way. Maybe they remembered something you mentioned offhand. Maybe they checked in just because they said they would. Maybe they delivered on a promise you forgot you even accepted. Those are the kinds of people who build trust without trying. Their consistency creates safety you can feel in your whole body. And then think about the times someone made you feel foolish for expecting them to keep their word. Maybe they laughed it off. Maybe they brushed it aside. Maybe they made it seem like your expectations were the problem. That discomfort you felt was your instincts protecting you from investing more than they deserved, because someone who breaks small promises will eventually break big ones too. Patterns repeat. Behavior scales. The small stuff is always a preview. Keeping small promises is not about perfection. Everyone forgets sometimes. What matters is whether the person tries, whether they care enough to correct themselves, whether they acknowledge the commitment instead of pretending it never happened. The people who love you, respect you, or simply value their own integrity do not let small promises slip through their fingers. They treat their word like something that reflects who they are. And when you start paying attention to this, everything becomes clearer. You stop getting fooled by big talk and start valuing consistent action. You learn to trust the person who keeps the tiny commitments without being reminded. You learn to distance yourself from the ones who treat their word like a prop. Because in the end, small promises are never small. They are the foundation of trust, and the people who honor them are the ones who deserve a real place in your life. Behavior when unseen. There is a part of every person that only shows up when they think no one is watching. And once you understand that truth, you start to see the world differently. You start realizing that the most accurate version of someone is not who they are in public or around people who can reward them. It is who they become when there is no applause, no audience, no pressure to impress, and no fear of judgment. That is where the real character lives, quietly, in the shadows of their choices. Most people act decent when they know eyes are on them. They speak softly. They choose polite words. They treat others well enough to maintain an image. But the moment the room empties, the mask loosens. Their tone changes. Their decisions shift. The boundaries they protect in front of others suddenly disappear. And it hits you hard because you start to realize that integrity is not proven in the big moments. Integrity is proven in the unnoticed ones. The shock comes when you remember specific scenes from your own life. Maybe you watched someone claim to be moral and kind, only to see how quickly they bent the rules when they thought no one would find out. Maybe a coworker who acted like a team player took credit for a project the second your back was turned. Maybe a friend who talked about honesty gossiped the moment the person they claimed to love walked away. These memories stick because they expose a gap between performance and truth. There is a psychological mechanism behind all of this. Humans naturally behave better when they feel observed. It is called social monitoring. When someone believes they are being seen, even subtly, their brain shifts into regulation mode. They manage their tone. They filter their reactions. They check their impulses. But remove the feeling of being watched, and the regulatory system relaxes. What comes out next is not a mistake. It is the raw script running underneath their social performance. And your instincts have felt this. You can sense when something is off even without proof. Maybe you noticed that someone is generous only when others are around. Maybe they help publicly but disappear privately. Maybe they speak one way to you, but you have a nagging feeling they speak differently when you leave. That tension you feel is your mind picking up inconsistencies in their moral footprint. But there is validation in this too. If you have ever wondered why certain people drain your energy, even when they do nothing obviously wrong, it is because your body can feel the misalignment. You can sense when someone wears a mask. You can sense when someone is acting and not being. Humans evolved to detect authenticity. The slight difference in tone, the micro expressions, the way someone changes depending on the audience, all of it sends signals to your nervous system. On the flip side, you have met people whose behavior does not shift whether the room is full or empty. They speak the same way. They treat others the same way. They do the right thing even when it has no prize attached to it. They offer help without needing credit. They tell the truth even when lying would be easier. They stay kind even when the world is not watching. And being around those people feels peaceful because your instincts know they are consistent. They do not need eyes on them to behave well. Their goodness is internal, not conditional. Think about small moments. The person who picks up trash no one asked them to pick up. The person who puts the grocery cart back even when the parking lot is empty. The person who does not flirt with temptation when their partner is not around. The person who speaks well of others without expecting the compliment to circle back. These behaviors seem simple, but they carry enormous weight. They reveal a core value system that does not crumble when supervision disappears. You might remember times when you were the unseen one, when you walked into a room unexpectedly and caught a glimpse of what people say or do when they think you are nowhere near. Maybe you overheard your own name and the tone told you everything. Maybe you witnessed someone act completely differently the moment the social risk was gone. Those moments change the way you trust, because you realize that loyalty in the light means nothing if it dies in the dark. Behavior, when unseen, is the ultimate measure of integrity. It is the real curriculum of character. Anyone can act kind when there is something to gain. Anyone can behave well when they want approval. But the person who chooses honesty when lies are easier, kindness when no one can reward it, and respect when no one can call them out is someone built from a deeper foundation. And once you start paying attention to this pattern, it becomes one of the clearest filters for who belongs in your life. You begin to value the ones who do not shift when the spotlight fades. The ones who are the same in public and private. The ones whose decisions are guided by inner principles rather than outer pressure. Because in the end, how someone behaves when unseen is not just a detail. It is the truth. And when you learn to recognize that truth, you stop getting attached to the performance and start investing in the person behind it. Stress reactions. There is something revealing about the moment a person gets pushed past their comfort zone. Not when life is calm. Not when everything is under control, but when stress hits hard and fast and the pressure cracks through their usual smile. That moment exposes a truth they cannot hide. Because when stress rolls in, the performance ends. The filters drop, and whatever is living underneath their practiced persona comes to the surface in pure form. You can feel it instantly when someone does not know how to handle stress. Their energy sharpens. Their words get clipped. Their eyes dart like they are looking for someone to blame for what they feel inside. And the shock of that moment sticks with you because it teaches you something about human nature. Stress does not change people. It reveals them. It does not create the reaction. It pulls it from whatever they have been storing inside. Think back on the times you saw someone lose their cool over something small. A missed call. A slight delay. A plan that shifted a little. The reaction is bigger than the situation deserves, and you are left standing there trying to make sense of why something minor became a storm. Psychology explains this with something called emotional displacement. When a person carries unprocessed stress, it builds pressure beneath the surface. Then, the moment something inconvenient happens, even if it is tiny, they release all that pressure into the nearest moment, or worse, into the nearest person. And you can feel the weight of that release. You might remember being on the receiving end of it. Someone snapped at you even though you did nothing wrong. Someone shifted their tone sharply because they felt overwhelmed and you happened to be present. Maybe they never apologized. Maybe they acted like you were too sensitive for noticing. But your instinct is right. Stress does not justify disrespect. Being overwhelmed does not give anyone permission to unload their frustration onto you. Yet there is another type of reaction that is even more telling. It is the person who goes silent under stress, not in a peaceful way, but in a way that freezes the room. Their stillness becomes tension. Their quiet becomes pressure. You feel like you cannot breathe around them because the air thickens with whatever emotion they refuse to speak. Silence can be as loud as yelling. When it is filled with unresolved stress, it makes everyone else feel responsible for keeping the peace. But then, there are the people who surprise you in the opposite way. The ones who stay grounded when life gets heavy. The ones whose voice stays steady even when their world is shaking. They are not unaffected. They are not superhuman. They simply learned how to feel stress without transferring it to everyone else. Psychological research calls this emotional regulation, the ability to manage internal chaos without projecting it outward. Being around someone like that feels safe. You can sense their steadiness because they do not turn their pressure into punishment. These people breathe before they react. They pause before they speak. They process before they respond. And in a world filled with people who panic or lash out the instant they feel discomfort, that level of control feels almost rare. You trust them without needing an explanation, because if someone can handle stress without hurting you, they can handle conflict without attacking you, uncertainty without abandoning you, and pressure without changing who they are. You can probably think of moments when someone handled stress with grace and it shifted your entire view of them. Maybe you watched a friend deal with a setback and they stayed patient. Maybe a partner faced something difficult and they stayed calm instead of collapsing into blame. Maybe a coworker had every reason to explode, but chose to breathe and keep the room steady. These memories stay with you because humans feel safest around the people whose reactions are predictable, even when circumstances are not. On the flip side, you also remember the moments when stress turned someone into a different person. Someone who was gentle suddenly became sharp. Someone who was supportive suddenly became distant. Someone who was confident suddenly became hostile. It catches you off guard because you realize that the person you thought you knew only existed when things were easy. Stress reveals whether someone has emotional maturity or emotional volatility. And there is an important validation here. If someone consistently reacts poorly under stress, it is not your job to absorb it. You are not a container for someone else's unmanaged emotions. You are not meant to carry the weight of reactions they refuse to control. Your discomfort around their stress reactions is not oversensitivity. It is your nervous system trying to protect you. There is also a deeper truth. Stress reactions predict future behavior. The person who becomes hostile under pressure will become hostile in conflict. The person who collapses into self-pity under stress will collapse when you need them most. The person who blames others during stressful moments will blame you the moment life becomes difficult. Stress is not a special circumstance. It is a preview. And once you start noticing this pattern, you learn to choose differently. You begin valuing the people who can stay steady without denying their feelings. The ones who can express stress without weaponizing it. The ones who take responsibility for their reactions instead of turning their emotions into someone else's burden. These are the people who make life easier, not heavier. Because in the end, its stress does not lie. It shows you who can bend without breaking, who can feel without exploding, and who can face pressure without losing their integrity. And when you learn to read those reactions clearly, you learn exactly who deserves a place in your life and who is not ready to hold that space. What they laugh at. There is a strange thing that happens when people laugh. It looks harmless from the outside. A smile, a breath, a quick burst of sound. But the moment someone laughs, you get a glimpse of what they truly find entertaining, and that tiny moment can reveal more about their character than an hour-long conversation. Because laughter exposes values. It exposes instincts. It exposes the kind of world they think is funny and the kind of world they think deserves empathy. You have probably seen it. Someone laughs a little too hard at someone else's mistake. They see a person trip or stutter or mispronounce a word, and before they even think, they burst into amusement. Not light-hearted amusement, not shared silliness. Something sharper, something that feels like they are enjoying another person's discomfort. That is a shock to witness, because it tells you instantly that their humor is rooted in superiority, not connection. And if you pay attention, this pattern shows up in so many small moments. Someone laughs at a person who is shy. Someone laughs at a coworker who is struggling to explain something. Someone laughs at a friend who is trying to open up about something vulnerable. The laughter lands like a punch. It feels out of place, and that is your instinct warning you. This is not really humor. This is a power play dressed as entertainment. Psychologists describe something called benign violation theory, which basically means people laugh when something feels wrong but safe. But here is the important part. What someone labels as safe says everything about their empathy. A kind person laughs at situations that are silly and unexpected. A cruel person laughs at situations where someone else is fragile. The difference is not subtle once you notice it. Think about the people who laugh when someone is anxious. They act entertained by the nerve shakes or the hesitation or the awkwardness. They pretend they are just joking, but what they are really doing is signaling that your feelings are amusing, not important, and that hits deeper than it seems, because laughter is contagious. When one person treats your discomfort as a joke, others pick up on the permission. Suddenly something that should have been met with understanding turns into a source of entertainment. But the opposite is also true. There are people who have the gentlest laughter, people who only laugh in ways that lift others up. They notice the absurd parts of life without turning people into the punchline. They laugh at shared confusion, shared chaos, shared irony. They laugh in a way that brings everyone closer instead of making someone feel small. When you are around people like that, their humor feels like warmth. You can feel safe being yourself because you know your flaws will be met with compassion, not mockery. There is a reason this matters on a deeper level. Laughter is spontaneous. It bypasses the part of the mind that filters and calculates and controls. You can fake politeness. You can fake interest. You can fake support. But you cannot fake what genuinely makes you laugh. When someone finds cruelty hilarious, they reveal an inner truth they might never speak out loud. They tell you exactly where their values sit without even realizing it. You might remember a moment like this. A moment where someone laughed at something that made you pause. Maybe they laughed at a homeless person on the street. Maybe they laughed at someone who was clearly hurting. Maybe they laughed at a body type, or an accent, or a struggle they themselves never had to face. It did not matter how small the moment seemed. Something inside you shifted. That laughter told you a story about them you could not unhear. And there is nothing wrong with paying attention to these reactions. Your discomfort is not dramatic. It is your intuition recognizing that laughter is a map. It points you toward people who make the world lighter and away from people who enjoy the weight of others. It helps you see who is emotionally safe and who uses humor as a shield for cruelty. There is also a validating truth here. If someone has ever laughed at your pain, it does not mean you were too sensitive. The body treats social rejection almost the same way it treats physical pain. Neurological research shows that the brain lights up in the same regions when you feel emotionally dismissed, so of course it hurt. Of course it stuck with you. Being laughed at during a vulnerable moment is not harmless. It is a form of emotional dismissal, and your reaction was human. But here is the part that often goes unnoticed. What someone laughs at also predicts how they will treat you during serious moments. The person who laughs at weakness will abandon you when you are weak. The person who laughs at insecurity will weaponize your insecurities the moment it benefits them. The person who laughs at other people's pain will not protect you from your own. Humor is not just entertainment, it is a preview. That is why noticing what people laugh at is not judgmental. It is protective. It teaches you who is safe to be your unfiltered self around. It shows you which people value connection over superiority. And it reminds you that laughter is one of the clearest signals of character, because it reveals what the heart celebrates when it thinks no one is paying close attention. And once you learn to watch for these moments, the truth becomes easy to see. Some people laugh to feel powerful. Others laugh to feel connected. And that difference tells you everything you need to know. Admitting they're wrong. There is something almost hypnotic about the moment a person gets caught in their own mistake. Not the harmless kind everyone makes, but the kind where the truth is sitting right in front of them, and the only thing left to do is either face it or run from it. That moment is a spotlight. It shows you exactly who a person is when their ego is put under pressure. Some people react like being wrong is a personal attack. Their shoulders tense. Their voice shifts. Their explanations get longer even though their logic gets weaker. You can feel them trying to reshape the story in real time, as if enough talking will make the mistake disappear. What is actually happening is psychological discomfort. The mind hates when reality challenges the image someone built of themselves. So instead of accepting it, they fight the truth like it is an enemy. Watching someone do this can be exhausting. They dodge the point. They bring up old situations as distractions. They try to make the conversation about your expectations instead of their actions. Suddenly, a simple correction becomes a maze where nothing gets resolved. You leave the moment feeling drained, not because the mistake was big, but because their pride refused to allow the situation to end cleanly. Psychologists call this emotional defensiveness, and it shows up most clearly in people whose sense of worth depends entirely on appearing right. To them, admitting a mistake feels like losing power. It feels like losing respect. They cling to their version of events, because they believe their value collapses if they ever show imperfection. What they do not realize is that this behavior slowly destroys trust. But then there are the people who react completely differently. They hear the correction. They pause. They absorb it. Instead of shifting the blame or stretching the truth, they simply acknowledge that they got something wrong. There is no dramatic apology, no exaggerated guilt, just a calm acceptance. And in that moment, you feel something shift. You feel closeness instead of tension. You feel respect instead of uncertainty. A person who can admit they are wrong shows a deeper strength. They are not afraid of losing face because they do not build their identity around pretending to be flawless. Their honesty makes the environment feel safer. It turns conflict into clarity instead of chaos. When you are around someone like that, conversations stay human. Disagreements stay respectful. Trust grows because their ego does not swallow the room whole. You probably have memories of moments like this. Maybe someone you care about admitted they misjudged something, and it instantly softened the entire situation. Maybe a friend owned a mistake without excuses. Maybe a partner came back after thinking things through and took responsibility for their part. Those moments stick with you because they show emotional maturity. They show the willingness to grow instead of protect a fragile self-image. And you have the opposite memories too. Moments where someone clearly made an error but twisted every part of the situation so they did not have to admit it. They blamed your reaction. They questioned your memory. They pretended the issue never happened. Those moments hurt more than the mistake because they show you that honesty is conditional. It only exists when it suits them. There is something validating about recognizing this pattern. When someone refuses to admit they are wrong, you are not dealing with logic. You are dealing with fear. Fear of being seen as imperfect. Fear of being accountable. Fear of looking small. And that fear turns into behavior that makes relationships unstable. It is not your job to force someone to grow out of it. What people rarely realize is that admitting mistakes is a sign of emotional regulation. It means a person can handle discomfort without collapsing or attacking. It means they value truth more than pride. It means their sense of self is strong enough to bend without breaking. Those traits make relationships healthy, safe, and steady. So pay attention when someone is proven wrong. Their reaction in that moment tells you whether they will build trust with you or erode it piece by piece. Some people protect their ego at any cost. Others protect the connection. And once you see that difference clearly, you know exactly who you can grow with and who will always turn honesty into a battlefield. Listening versus pretending. There is a moment in every conversation where you can tell whether the other person is actually with you or just performing the role of someone who cares. It usually happens in the quiet parts. When you are talking about something that matters to you and their face shifts just slightly, their eyes glaze a little, their responses become automatic. That is when you realize they are not listening. They are pretending. And once you feel that difference, you cannot unfeel it. Real listening is one of the rarest skills because it requires presence. It requires someone to pause their own thoughts and step into yours. Most people are not comfortable doing that. They nod. They make noises of agreement. They toss out quick reactions, but the whole time they are waiting for their turn to speak. They do not want to understand you. They want to return to themselves. Their attention is a temporary loan, and they want it back as fast as possible. You have probably experienced the shock of this. You open up, thinking you are being heard, only to realize the person missed the entire core of what you said. They repeat something back to you that is not even close, or they respond with advice that has nothing to do with what you were trying to express. Or they shift the topic to themselves like the conversation is a stage and you were only the opening act. It is subtle, but it is painful. It feels like disappearing right in front of someone who claims to care. Psychology explains this through something called egocentric listening. The mind prioritizes information that relates directly to itself. So instead of absorbing your experience, the other person interprets everything based on how it applies to them. That is why some people constantly interrupt with their own stories. They are not trying to connect. They are trying to feel involved. But then there is real listening. And when it happens, it is instantly noticeable. The other person does not rush you. They do not look past you. They stay present with your words the same way you stay present with someone who matters. Their eyes soften. Their posture settles. Their responses come from understanding instead of obligation. Real listening feels like someone is holding the weight of your thoughts so you can breathe for a moment. People who listen like this are calm inside. They do not treat conversations like competitions. They do not treat your feelings like inconveniences. They reflect back the emotional truth of what you said instead of giving you a rehearsed line. When you talk to someone like this, even if the topic is difficult, you feel supported instead of exposed. You probably have moments in your memory where someone truly listened to you. Maybe it was a quiet conversation where you felt seen. Maybe it was a late-night talk where you opened up and the other person simply held space. Those moments glow in your memory because they are rare. Real listening makes you feel understood in a world full of noise. And you also remember the opposite. Moments where you were telling someone something important and they stayed glued to their phone. Moments where you tried to express a fear and they brushed it off with a quick comment. Moments where you felt the exact second their mind drifted away, even though they were still sitting right in front of you. Those experiences teach you more about a person than their words ever will. There is something validating in recognizing this difference. If you have ever felt unheard, it is not because you failed to communicate. It is because the other person lacked the capacity or willingness to be present. Feeling ignored does not mean you are unimportant. It means they were never listening in the first place. And here is the deeper truth. Listening predicts how someone will handle conflict, intimacy, and trust. The person who cannot listen will misunderstand you in every disagreement. They will miss your needs even when you speak them clearly. They will make you feel alone even when you are standing right next to them. But the person who listens will understand you even when your words stumble. They will make room for your emotions instead of running from them. They will create connection instead of confusion. So pay attention to how people receive your words. Listening is not about hearing sounds. It is about valuing the person who makes them. And once you notice who listens and who only pretends, you stop confusing proximity with presence, and you start choosing the people who make your voice feel real. Respecting boundaries. There is a moment in every relationship where someone shows you exactly how much they respect you. It does not happen during big celebrations or easy conversations. It happens the moment you express a boundary, a simple request, a limit, a line, and what they do next reveals everything you need to know about their character. Some people treat boundaries like challenges. The second you set one, they act confused or offended. They pretend they do not understand what you are asking for. They try to negotiate your comfort like it is a bad deal they want to talk you out of. They twist your boundary into a personal insult, as if your need for space or clarity is proof that you do not trust them enough. It is draining to witness, because their reaction is not about you at all. It is about their belief that your needs should never inconvenience them. You can feel this in small moments. You tell someone you cannot talk right now, and instead of respecting that, they call you again. You say you need time to think, and they pressure you for answers. You explain that a certain topic is sensitive, and they bring it up anyway because they want a reaction. These are not accidents. These are signals. When someone dismisses your boundary, they are telling you that their comfort matters more than your well-being. Psychologists describe this as boundary resistance, a behavior where people push against your limits to maintain control or avoid emotional responsibility. The problem is that many people learn to normalize this. They tell themselves the person did not mean it, or it is just their personality, or it is easier to keep the peace than to assert themselves again. But ignoring boundary violations does not make them disappear. It trains the other person to ignore your needs even more. But then there are the people who react completely differently. When you set a boundary, they do not make you explain it 5 different ways. They do not guilt-trip you. They do not accuse you of being dramatic. They simply accept it. They adjust. They honor what you said without turning it into a negotiation. And that response feels like a breath of fresh air, because it shows they see you as a whole person, not an extension of their desires. People who respect boundaries understand something fundamental. Relationships thrive when both people feel emotionally safe. They know that limits are not walls. They are guideposts. They prevent resentment. They protect connection. They help communication stay clear instead of tangled. When someone respects your boundaries, even the small ones, you feel trust grow naturally. You feel seen instead of managed. You feel valued instead of tolerated. You can probably remember a moment where someone respected your boundary instantly. Maybe you told a friend you needed space, and they gave it without disappearing. Maybe you told a partner you were not ready to talk about something, and they waited without pressure. Those moments stay with you because they show maturity. They show someone who listens not just to your words, but to your emotional needs. And you also remember the opposite. The people who turned your boundaries into arguments. The people who accused you of being distant or cold the moment you tried to protect your peace. The people who made you feel guilty for asserting something simple. Those reactions were not misunderstandings. They were warnings. They showed you that the relationship was not built on respect. It was built on what you tolerated. There is something deeply validating about recognizing this. Your boundaries are not demands. They are expressions of self-respect. Anyone who truly cares about you will care about the things that protect your emotional health. Anyone who gets angry at your boundaries is not upset because they care too much. They are upset because your limits interfere with their convenience. And here is the truth that changes everything. Boundaries do not push the right people away. Boundaries reveal who the right people are. The person who respects your limits will respect your time, your feelings, your energy, and your growth. The person who resists your boundaries will resist your needs, your voice, and your self-worth. So pay close attention to how people respond when you say no or not now, or this does not feel right to me. Their reaction tells you more than their promises ever will. Because respecting boundaries is not about rules, it is about respect itself. And once you see that clearly, you stop settling for people who step over your limits and start choosing the ones who honor them without hesitation. Interrupting habits. It is strange how much a simple interruption can reveal about someone. Most people think interrupting is just a small social slip, something everyone does from time to time, but it goes much deeper than that. When someone repeatedly cuts you off, talks over you, or jumps in before your thought is even halfway formed, they are showing you how they see you. Or more accurately, how little they see you at all. There is this instant you feel when you get interrupted. Your mind pulls back. Your stomach tightens a little. You tell yourself to be patient, to let them finish, to avoid conflict. But inside, you already know something is off. Because interrupting is not just someone being excited. It is not just a fast talker thing. Persistent interruption is a dominance behavior. It is someone declaring that their thoughts deserve the floor more than yours do. Communication studies show that chronic interrupters fall into two main types. One type does it out of anxiety. They fear silence or losing their train of thought, so they jump in preemptively. It is still disruptive, but the intention is not to overpower you. The second type, though, interrupts as a way to control the flow of the conversation. They cut you off because they believe their perspective is more valuable, more urgent, more correct. And this second type is the one you need to pay attention to. Think about the last time someone kept interrupting you. You were trying to express something important, maybe something tender or emotional, and they could not even let you finish one breath. They spun the conversation back to themselves, their story, their logic. It is like they are grabbing the steering wheel of the dialogue every chance they get. And the worst part is when they interrupt to correct you on something tiny or to make a point you were already about to make. It becomes clear that they are not listening. They are waiting for their turn, waiting for the spotlight. But then there is the other side of the spectrum, the people who actually listen. You can hear it in the silence between your words. They wait. They allow you to finish your entire thought before responding. They pause long enough to make you feel like they genuinely want to understand you. When they do speak, they build on what you said instead of overriding it. Talking to someone like that feels almost therapeutic because it reminds you what real respect sounds like. You might not realize it, but your brain picks up on these differences immediately. When someone keeps interrupting you, your nervous system enters a subtle defensive state. You start tightening your language, trimming your thoughts, rushing to finish before they jump in again. Your communication becomes survival mode instead of connection mode. Meanwhile, when someone listens patiently, your brain relaxes. You think more clearly. You become more open, more honest, more willing to share. This is why the habit of interrupting matters so much. It is not about etiquette. It is about emotional safety. You cannot feel seen by someone who does not make space for your voice, and you cannot build trust with someone who treats every conversation like a competition for airtime. The ironic part is that interrupters often see themselves as good communicators. They think they are being passionate, engaged, involved. They do not notice the way people shrink around them. They do not notice the hesitation, the awkward pauses, the subtle withdrawal. But you do. You feel it every time it happens. What makes all of this even more revealing is what happens when you gently call it out. If you say something like, "Hold on, let me finish," or "Wait a second, I am still talking," watch their reaction. Someone who respects you will immediately stop and adjust. They will apologize without defensiveness. They will make room. But someone who feels entitled to the conversation will get annoyed, offended, or dismissive. They will act like you are the one disrupting the flow, simply because you ask to be heard. So pay attention to the interruptions. Not the occasional ones that slip out in moments of excitement, but the repeated pattern of someone cutting you off again and again. Because that pattern is telling you something crucial. It is revealing how they value your voice, how they handle control, and how much room they are willing to give you in the relationship. Listening is one of the purest forms of respect. And the people who interrupt you the least are often the ones who respect you the most. Body language shifts. There is something almost unsettling about how clearly the body speaks long before the mouth does. People think honesty is about words, but the truth is revealed in the tiny shifts they do not even realize they are making. When someone changes how they sit, how they stand, how they look at you, they are telling you a story they would never dare to put into sentences. You have probably felt it. You walk into a room and the energy changes. Someone straightens up or slouches or suddenly becomes still. They might avoid your eyes for a second too long or force a smile that dies before it reaches their eyes. These small shifts feel like whispers in a language your brain understands instinctively. You do not consciously analyze it, but you feel something tighten in your chest. Something is off. Psychologists explain that the human brain scans body language faster than conscious thought. It is a survival mechanism. Before you evaluate a person with logic, your nervous system has already made a judgment. Safe, unsafe, welcoming, cold, honest, hiding something. The fascinating part is that most people think they are masking their emotions when they are actually broadcasting them with startling clarity. Think about the last time someone pretended they were not upset, yet the tension in their shoulders gave it away immediately. Or when someone insisted they were listening, but their body was angled away, their foot pointed toward the exit, their arms folded like a shield. The words said "I care" while the body said "I want to leave." And whether you acknowledged it or not, your brain believed the body. Body language shifts are most revealing when a person is caught off guard. When you enter the room unexpectedly and they quickly adjust themselves. When you mention a certain name and their expression flickers before they recover. When you ask a simple question and their hands fidget or their voice tightens. Even though they are trying to stay casual, these moments are raw. They are unfiltered. They are honest in a way the spoken explanation never is. One of the biggest signs is a shift in eye behavior. People who feel comfortable look at you naturally, not staring but not avoiding you. When someone suddenly looks away, blinks too often, or studies something unimportant to the side, their mind is protecting itself. They might be hiding discomfort, guilt, resentment, or fear. And the moment usually passes quickly, but the flicker tells you everything. Another revealing shift happens in physical distance. When two people feel connected, the space between them feels easy. Neither one thinks about it. But when someone starts to back up a couple of inches, or leans away without realizing it, that distance is emotional before it is physical. Their body is stepping back from something they do not want to face. Even the hands give people away. Someone who feels open leaves their hands visible and relaxed. Someone who feels threatened or defensive will hide them, cross their arms, or grip something tightly. It is like the body instinctively shields itself long before the mind admits it is nervous. What makes these shifts so powerful is that they are not calculated. They come from the oldest part of the brain, the part concerned with truth and safety, not appearance. That is why you can trust them. People lie with words. They rarely lie effectively with posture and movement. You learn who someone really is when you watch how their body responds in different situations, how they react when you walk in unexpectedly, how they shift when they hear good news about someone else, how their posture changes when they are around someone they respect compared to someone they secretly look down on. These contrasts are the clearest windows into their character. Pay attention to the sudden stiffness, the forced smile, the quick retreat, the way they angle their body when they think you are not noticing. These are not random gestures. They are signals. They are confessions without sound. Because in the end, body language is not decoration. It is truth trying to escape. And the people who move with ease around you, who stay open, who do not shift into tension whenever you speak, are often the ones who are genuinely aligned with you. The body rarely lies. It reveals the heart long before the voice tries to explain it. Handling vulnerability. There is a certain moment with people that tells you everything you need to know. And it is not when life is exciting or easy or perfectly put together. It is the moment you let your guard down, the moment you show something fragile, something imperfect, something that is not polished or controlled. How someone handles your vulnerability reveals their soul with a clarity that everyday situations never can. You can feel the shift instantly. You share something real, and the atmosphere around the conversation changes. For some people, that moment becomes too heavy. They tense up. They deflect. They make jokes to avoid the discomfort. Or worse, they make your pain about them. They respond in a way that leaves you feeling smaller instead of safer. It is a quiet sting, because all you wanted was to be understood for a moment, yet you walk away feeling exposed and unsupported. There is a pattern behind this. People who cannot handle vulnerability usually struggle with their own. They grew up believing that emotions are threats instead of signals. They were taught to toughen up or hide how they feel, or keep everything inside until it hardens. So when you bring them something tender, they do not know what to do with it. Instead of holding space for you, they shut down or shift the conversation or pretend not to hear the weight of what you said. And then there are the ones who take your vulnerability and mishandle it. They store it like ammunition. They bring it back later during an argument or remind you of it when they want the upper hand. That is a level of betrayal most people never see coming. Because the moment you opened up, you believed you were safe. You believed your honesty was respected. When someone weaponizes that honesty, they are telling you that emotional intimacy with them is dangerous. But when someone can genuinely hold your vulnerability, everything feels different. You feel it in their silence, not the uncomfortable type, but a steady, grounded presence that tells you they are actually listening. They do not rush to fix you. They do not judge you. They do not minimize your feelings with quick solutions. They simply stay with you. They give your emotions a place to breathe. That is what emotional safety feels like. Not grand gestures, not perfect advice, just presence. Research on emotional regulation explains that when you share something vulnerable, Your brain is searching for co-regulation. You are looking for a steady nervous system to connect with, someone who helps your own system calm down. When the person responds with warmth, your brain relaxes. Your breathing slows. The tension in your chest eases. You feel connected instead of alone. It is not dramatic, it is human. Think about the people who have made you feel safe in these moments. They looked at you differently. They softened. They did not rush your story. They asked gentle questions that made you feel respected instead of exposed. They treated your vulnerability like something valuable instead of something inconvenient. Those moments stay with you for years because they show you what real support feels like. Now think about the ones who did the opposite, the ones who brushed you off, the ones who changed the subject, the ones who made your pain seem exaggerated or inconvenient or unnecessary. Those reactions did not just hurt. They taught you something. They taught you that the relationship could not hold the weight of the real you. The ability to handle vulnerability is not about emotional strength. It is about emotional maturity. Anyone can stand beside you when you are fine. Anyone can enjoy the confident, composed version of you. But when life strips away your composure and all you have left is honesty, only a certain kind of person can meet you there without judgment. Pay attention to how people respond when you share something tender. Do they lean in or retreat? Do they listen or deflect? Do they hold your truth gently or reshape it to fit their comfort? Their reaction is not random. It is a reflection of who they are and what kind of space they are capable of offering. Because in the end, vulnerability is not a test. It is an invitation, and the people who can hold that invitation with care are the ones who deserve to know the deeper parts of you. Giving without credit. There is something rare about people who give without needing their name attached to everything. It sounds simple, almost basic, yet it is one of the clearest measures of character you will ever see. Because anyone can act generous when there is applause waiting. Anyone can be kind when they know someone will notice. But the true test is what a person does when no spotlight is shining on them and no reward is guaranteed. You can see the difference in small moments. Someone helps you only if others are watching, and you can feel that performative energy. Their kindness has a stage. Their generosity has a script. They want the praise, the admiration disguised as humility. And if no one is there to clap, the gesture suddenly becomes smaller or disappears altogether. You start to realize their giving was never about the act. It was about the credit. Then there are the people who absolutely cannot stand the idea of someone else getting praise. If a good thing happens, they rush to explain how they contributed. If someone compliments a project, they twist the conversation to highlight their role. You can sense the panic in their ego, like a child afraid of being forgotten. They live in a world where recognition is oxygen, and they cannot allow anyone around them to breathe without competing for the same air. But real generosity is quieter than that. It is almost invisible. It is the friend who checks on you without broadcasting it. It is the coworker who fixes a problem before it reaches you and never mentions it again. It is the person who shares resources, opportunities, or wisdom without announcing it like a billboard. They do not need to be praised because the act itself is the fulfillment. Psychologists have studied this and found something interesting. People who give without seeking credit tend to have a stronger internal sense of worth. They do not need external validation because their identity is not built on applause. They operate from abundance rather than scarcity. They are not trying to prove themselves through each good deed. They simply act from who they are. You can feel that difference instantly. When someone gives from ego, the gesture feels heavy. There are strings attached, expectations, unspoken debts. You sense that if you do not acknowledge their help loudly enough, they might resent you for it. But when someone gives from genuine care, the gesture feels light. It does not demand anything from you. It leaves you feeling supported instead of obligated. Think about the people in your life who have helped you quietly. The ones who never told others about the times they listened to you break down. The ones who never bragged about the moments they stepped in when you were overwhelmed. Those people live by a different rhythm. Their kindness is not a performance. It is a natural extension of who they are. Now contrast that with someone who constantly reminds you of everything they have ever done for you. Every favor becomes a story they repeat. Every act of support becomes a resume entry they pull out when they want leverage. These are not gifts. These are transactions disguised as generosity. And your intuition knows the difference. The real reason giving without credit matters is because it exposes the intention behind the action. Some people give to feel superior. Some give to maintain control. Some give because they crave admiration, but a rare few give because kindness is simply part of their internal architecture. They do not need payment in the form of attention. Pay attention to how people respond when they help someone and no one notices. Do they stay steady or do they get frustrated? Do they keep giving or do they withdraw because the credit was missing? Do they act with the same generosity when the world is silent? That reaction tells you everything. The person who still gives when no one sees it is trustworthy. They are guided by values instead of ego, and those are the people you want in your life. Not the ones who hand you kindness like it is a receipt they expect you to sign, but the ones who give because that is simply who they are, even when the world is not watching. Attitude toward fairness. It is strange how fairness sounds like such a simple idea, yet it exposes people in ways almost nothing else can. When life is balanced and easy, most people appear reasonable. Most seem kind, mature, even thoughtful. But the moment fairness becomes inconvenient, the moment the scales tilt in a direction they do not like, that is when their real character steps into the light. You can see it in the smallest situations. Something as basic as splitting a bill with friends or sharing responsibilities or taking turns with tasks. Some people naturally move toward balance. They notice when someone else has been carrying more weight, and they step in without being asked. They pay attention to the effort in the room, not just their own comfort. Their sense of fairness is like an internal compass that keeps them aligned. And then there are the others, the ones who are completely blind to their own advantage. If things are stacked in their favor, they call it normal. If someone else is struggling more than they are, they shrug it off as someone else's problem. But the moment fairness asks something of them, the moment balance requires sacrifice or accountability, suddenly it becomes complicated. They get defensive. They argue. They act like fairness is an attack instead of a principle. What is even more revealing is how people behave when they think they can get away with taking more than their share. Some folks will push the boundaries just a little, then a little more. They see that no one is stopping them, so they keep stretching the line until fairness disappears completely. It is not about need. It is about entitlement. It is about believing they deserve more simply because they want more. You see this in workplaces, families, friendships, and relationships. There are people who always take the easier role, the lighter load, the better seat, the quicker benefit. They do it quietly, almost casually, as if it is their natural place in the world. And if you point it out, they act shocked, even offended, like the conversation itself is unfair. It becomes clear that fairness only matters to them when they feel disadvantaged. Yet the people who truly value fairness operate differently. They check themselves. They look at situations through the eyes of others, not just their own. They ask if something feels balanced, not only for them, but for everyone involved. They correct their mistakes without needing to be called out. They do not fear fairness because fairness does not threaten their ego. It reinforces their integrity. There is also an important psychological layer to this. Studies show that people with a strong internal sense of fairness tend to develop deeper connections and healthier relationships. Why? Because fairness builds trust. It creates safety. When you know someone will not exploit a situation just because they can, you relax around them. You feel respected. You feel considered. You feel like you are part of something balanced instead of something one-sided. But when fairness is missing, everything feels off. You start walking on mental eggshells. You begin calculating whether the exchange is worth it. You feel yourself losing energy around that person because the relationship feels like a quiet negotiation instead of a natural flow. And eventually, you realize something important. Unfairness is not an accident with them. It is a pattern. Think about the people who surprise you in the best way, the ones who go out of their way to make sure you are not carrying too much. The ones who notice when you have done more than your share and automatically step in to balance things out. These people make life feel lighter. Their fairness does not need applause. It is their default mode. Now think about the people who surprise you in the worst way. The ones who take and take and take, then act confused when you finally say something. The ones who twist fairness into manipulation. The ones who treat balance like a threat. You cannot build anything stable with someone like that, because fairness is the foundation of trust, and trust is the foundation of everything else. So watch how people treat fairness when it benefits them, and when it does not. Do they stay consistent or do they shift? Do they care about balance or only advantage? Fairness is not just a moral idea. It is a reflection of how someone views you. If they value fairness, they value you. And if they do not, that truth will eventually show no matter how good their words sound. Who apologizes first? There is a moment after every conflict that tells you exactly who someone is, and it does not happen during the argument. It happens in the quiet after. When the voices calm down, when the adrenaline fades, when the ego starts whispering excuses and justifications. That is when you find out who takes responsibility and who waits for you to fix everything, because the person who apologizes first reveals something deeper than regret. They reveal their emotional maturity. The truth is, apologizing first feels dangerous. It feels like stepping out onto a ledge without knowing if the other person will meet you halfway. Some people cannot handle that discomfort. Their pride is too fragile. They cling to the belief that apologizing makes them weak, or wrong, or less in control. They would rather sit in silence, replaying the argument in their minds, building a case for why you should be the one to break the tension. And the longer they wait, the heavier the room feels. You can feel it in their energy. They walk around acting normal, but the air is stiff. They talk about everything except what actually happened. They act like the conflict will magically disappear if they just ignore it long enough. But underneath all of that avoidance is a simple truth. They are scared to take the first step because they cannot separate apology from humiliation. Their ego is running the show. Then there are the people who apologize only when cornered. They wait until you bring it up. They wait until you are frustrated enough to force the conversation. And when they finally say sorry, it comes with conditions. They say things like, "I am sorry you felt that way," or "I am sorry, but here is why it was mostly your fault." Their apology becomes a way to win instead of a way to repair. You walk away feeling unheard, even though they technically apologized. But when someone genuinely apologizes first, something shifts. Not because they are weaker, not because they are taking all the blame, but because they care about the relationship more than they care about being right. They understand that apologies are not about assigning guilt. They are about acknowledging impact. They are about taking the tension out of the moment so connection can breathe again. Psychologists explain that apologizing first activates a part of the mind responsible for emotional regulation. It means someone is able to step outside their own perspective and see the situation through yours. That ability is rare. It requires empathy, humility, and enough self-awareness to say something that very few people ever master. I might have been wrong. Or at least, I might have hurt you in ways I did not intend. Think about the time someone apologized first to you. Really think about it. How did you feel? Probably relieved, probably softened, probably more willing to meet them in the middle. Their apology did not belittle them. It strengthened the bond. It showed a level of emotional courage that made you trust them more. And now think about the times you had to be the one who always apologized first. Over and over, even when the situation was not completely your fault. After a while, it stopped feeling like connection and started feeling like responsibility. Like you were carrying the entire emotional weight of the relationship on your shoulders. That is not love. That is imbalance disguised as peacekeeping. Who apologizes first is not about finding the guilty person. It is about revealing who is capable of stepping out of the cycle of tension. It shows who sees resolution as more important than ego. It shows who is willing to be vulnerable for the sake of harmony instead of hiding behind emotional walls. Some people will never apologize first because they fear losing power. They do not realize that withholding an apology is what weakens the relationship. And some people will always apologize first because they understand that repairing connection is not a loss. It is a strength. It is leadership. It is care in its purest form. So watch closely after the conflict fades, when everything is quiet and the choice belongs to both of you. Who takes that first step? Who reaches out? Who softens? Who acknowledges their part? That moment will tell you more about the relationship than the argument ever did. Because in the end, the person who apologizes first is not the one who lost. They are the one who values the bond enough to rebuild it. Mood when tired. It is surprising how clearly a person reveals their true nature when they are exhausted. Not when they are rested. Not when everything is under control, but when their energy is drained and their patience is thin. Because when someone is tired, the filter comes off. The mask loosens. The little performative parts of their personality fade away. What is left is their real emotional baseline. You can see it in the smallest interactions. Some people become sharp the moment fatigue hits them. Their words turn cold. Their tone becomes clipped. They treat everyone around them like an interruption. Suddenly, basic kindness feels like too much work, and you stand there wondering how such a simple shift in their energy unlocked this much irritation. There is a reason for this. When people are tired, the brain has fewer resources to regulate emotion. The part of the mind that normally smooths over frustration or softens reactions goes quiet. What you get instead is the unfiltered version of someone. The version that does not try to impress. The version that instinctively prioritizes what matters most to them. And that is what makes tired moods so revealing. Think about the people who become mean when tired. They snap, they sulk, they withdraw, or they make everyone else pay for their exhaustion. Their fatigue becomes a permission slip for disrespect. They act like being tired excuses them from basic decency. You can feel how their mood fills the room, how everyone subtly adjusts to avoid triggering them further. Their exhaustion becomes a quiet form of control. Now think about the people who stay gentle, even when they are drained. They may speak a little slower, move a little quieter, or have fewer words to give, but their kindness stays. Their tone stays warm. Their patience stays intact. They do not weaponize their fatigue. They do not use exhaustion as a free pass to hurt others. With them, tiredness brings honesty, but not cruelty. There is a kind of strength in that, a kind of character that is not loud or boastful, but felt deeply. It shows that their kindness is not a performance. It is not something they turn on only when they have extra energy. It is part of who they are, even when they have nothing left to give. You can learn a lot from observing someone on a long day. How they talk to people who need something from them when they have no energy left. How they respond when plans change and they are already drained. How they treat service workers, children, or strangers when they are exhausted. Because fatigue removes the polished version of a person and replaces it with the truest version. There is something else worth noticing. Some people get sad when tired, not irritable, not cold, just quietly vulnerable. Their guard slips in a different way. They become more honest about their fears or more open about what has been weighing on them. Fatigue loosens the emotional armor, and suddenly the parts they usually hide surface without resistance. These moments create a gentle kind of closeness because exhaustion reveals truth instead of hostility. But with irritable people, tiredness reveals entitlement. They expect others to accommodate their mood. They believe that being tired gives them the right to demand things, to dismiss people, or to make everyone move around their discomfort. Their exhaustion becomes everyone else's problem. Pay attention to these patterns, not the occasional slip, because everyone has moments where tiredness gets the best of them. What matters is the consistent rhythm of their character. If someone turns harsh every time they are tired, that harshness is not temporary. It is simply unfiltered. If someone stays steady even when running on empty, that steadiness is who they truly are. Because tiredness is honesty. It shows who needs the spotlight to stay kind and who can stay grounded without it. It shows who blames their mood on everyone else and who takes responsibility even when worn out. It shows who has emotional discipline and who crumbles the second their comfort is threatened. Watch how someone acts when exhaustion strips away their ideal self. That is the version you should trust. That is the version that tells you exactly who they are beneath their practiced charm. Use of small power. The small power is the kind of power most people never admit they have. It is the authority you hold in moments so routine that they seem invisible. It is the ability to approve or deny something simple. It is the few seconds where someone has to wait for your decision. It is how you behave when you are the one with the final say in a small situation. And those moments reveal more about character than any grand display of control. The interesting thing about small power is that it is subtle. It hides in everyday interactions. You see it in the way someone speaks to a receptionist, a waiter, a security guard, or anyone in a role that requires politeness or compliance. You see it in how they treat people who cannot push back. That 1 second of advantage exposes everything they believe about themselves and everyone around them. Some people become inflated when handed small power. They talk a little louder. They become a little more demanding. They emphasize rules just to feel superior. They extend the wait time for someone simply because they can. Their behavior becomes a performance meant to remind others of their temporary authority. This reveals insecurity disguised as dominance. They do not feel powerful inside, so they use these small moments to convince themselves they matter. The power is not real. Only the neediness behind it is. There are also people who become cruel when given even the slightest authority. They enjoy watching someone else be uncomfortable. They take pleasure in enforcing restrictions that are unnecessary or inflexible. It is not about order. It is about ego. Their small power allows them to push, to delay, to humiliate, to control. And they do. Not because the situation requires it, but because the feeling of superiority is intoxicating to them. Small power exposes entitlement quickly. If someone believes others should bow to them simply because they hold a minor advantage, their worldview is built on dominance rather than respect. These are the same people who become difficult partners, unhealthy bosses, or unreliable friends. Their reaction to authority, even in miniature form, reveals a structure of character that brings chaos when pressure increases. But then there are people who handle small power with quiet grace. They do not use their advantage to elevate themselves. They do not inflate their voice or shrink someone else. They understand that authority, even in small doses, is a responsibility rather than a reward. They use their position to help, not to brag. They make the process smoother, not harder. Their decisions are guided by fairness rather than ego. When you meet someone like this, you can feel the difference immediately. Their presence is steady. Their judgment is balanced. Their power does not turn into a performance. The way someone treats people in those subtle moments of authority tells you how they will behave in larger situations. Character scales upward. A person who becomes arrogant over small power will become dangerous with real power. A person who stays kind with small power can be trusted with larger responsibility. Small power is a rehearsal for real influence. It shows the foundation before life builds anything on top of it. These moments also reveal emotional maturity. A person who handles small authority with respect understands that dignity is not a competition. They know that making someone else feel smaller does not make them larger. They recognize that softness and strength can exist in the same action. They are aware of the weight their decisions carry even when the situation appears insignificant. That awareness is wisdom in motion. Small power is everywhere. It appears when someone checks your identification. It appears when a receptionist decides how to schedule you. It appears when a teacher grades an assignment. It appears when someone can speed up a process or slow it down. It appears in friendships, families, workplaces, and relationships. Someone always has a little more control for a moment. How they use that moment is the real test. When evaluating a person, do not look at how they behave in dramatic displays of influence. Look at their smallest moments of authority. Their reaction to having just a bit of control will tell you whether they lead with ego or kindness, whether they seek dominance or fairness, whether they value respect or just the feeling of being superior. Small power is never actually small. It is a full mirror, and people show their truest reflection in it. Relationship with gossip. Gossip is one of the fastest ways to see who someone really is. Not the kind where people share harmless stories about strangers, but the kind that spreads behind your back. The kind that judges, exaggerates, and exposes things meant to be private. How a person engages with gossip tells you more about their character than 1,000 conversations ever could. Some people are addicted to it. They listen with eagerness, soak in the details, and repeat it to everyone around them. They feel a thrill in having the latest information, as if knowledge itself gives them power. It does not matter if it is true. It does not matter if it hurts someone. What matters is that they are part of the loop. They are seen. They feel important because someone else is the topic. This is not harmless curiosity. This is a craving for control and attention. Then there are people who participate selectively. They might pretend to avoid gossip, but when they hear something juicy about someone they dislike, they cannot resist. Their judgment becomes loud, their tone sharp. They frame the story in a way that justifies their own sense of superiority. They use gossip as a tool to elevate themselves while undermining others. You can feel the subtle toxicity even if they never name names. The energy is enough to alert your instincts. But there are people who treat gossip differently. They listen, but they do not share. They refuse to turn someone else's private life into entertainment. They steer conversations away from harm. They do not need to be in the loop because their sense of self does not rely on information about others. For them, respect and discretion are stronger than curiosity. Their loyalty and integrity show up even in small, quiet ways, in moments when no one is watching. Psychologists explain that gossip is tied to social intelligence and dominance hierarchies. Those who cannot resist spreading it often seek validation through social leverage. They measure their own worth by how much influence they have over others' reputations. Those who resist gossip, by contrast, measure worth differently. They value trust, connection, and empathy. They see the harm in words and choose not to weaponize them, even when it is tempting. Pay attention to how someone talks about people when you are not the topic. Notice if they speak kindly about absent friends, or if they twist stories to entertain, control, or belittle. Notice how they react when you refuse to engage. Do they pressure you, guilt you, or respect your boundary? That response is as revealing as the gossip itself. It shows whether they understand the weight of words and the responsibility of honesty. Gossip also shows emotional maturity. Someone who cannot resist it tends to react to jealousy, envy, or discomfort with attack. Someone who stays above it can handle tension without throwing others under the bus. It is a pattern. How a person treats absent people predicts how they will treat you when you are not around. Loyalty and character are not optional. They show up in the details. And here is the hardest part. Gossip is often disguised as connection. People who spread it may seem charming, social, or trustworthy in public. But the moment you step away or trust them, the truth surfaces. Who they really are is not in the spotlight. It is in the whispers, the side comments, the way they measure their own value against someone else's missteps. If you want to know who you can count on, pay attention to gossip. Who seeks it? Who spreads it? Who resists it? That is where integrity lives. That is where loyalty is tested. That is where you learn which relationships are safe and which are not, because words can build or destroy, and the people who understand that are the ones worth holding close. Words versus actions. There is a moment when words stop meaning anything. It happens slowly at first. Someone promises, someone reassures, someone swears that they will be there, that they will change, that they will support you. And for a while, you want to believe them. You repeat the phrases in your head like mantras, hoping that the repetition will make the intention real. But eventually, words meet reality, and reality does not lie. Some people live in words. They speak boldly about their loyalty, their commitment, their love, their fairness. They craft sentences so polished that you feel warm inside. They apologize with perfect phrasing. They promise with confidence. Their vocabulary is convincing, but actions tell a different story. They forget the small things. They skip moments that matter. They break promises in ways that feel invisible but add up. And that is when you realize that words without follow-through are empty echoes. The shock of this is subtle but deep. You begin to notice patterns, invitations that never materialize, calls that never come, deadlines that are missed, efforts that are promised but never made. You catch yourself repeating their words in your head, trying to reconcile them with the way they behave. But there is no reconciliation. The words were a mask. The actions are the truth. And then there are people who act first and speak later. They do not advertise their loyalty. They do not stage their generosity. They simply do what needs to be done, consistently, quietly, without needing recognition. They show up when others are struggling. They fulfill promises they never needed to announce. Their actions are not flashy. They are reliable. They are the proof that character is measured in movement and not speech. Psychologists explain that humans are wired to respond to promises. Words feel like commitments because they signal intention, but without corresponding action, the intention is hollow. Actions are physical evidence of values. They carry weight in the world because they intersect with reality. Words alone remain abstract. They can comfort temporarily, but they cannot sustain trust. You have probably felt both extremes. The person who talks endlessly about loyalty but disappears at the first challenge. The person who says little but shows up in ways that matter, in ways you remember long after the conversation ends. That contrast is one of the clearest indicators of who is dependable, who is manipulative, and who is genuinely aligned with you. Words versus actions is also a lesson in emotional intelligence. Some people apologize or promise to avoid repeating mistakes, but then their behavior does not change. That mismatch is exhausting. It is frustrating. It creates uncertainty. You begin to second-guess whether their words are ever sincere. Meanwhile, someone whose actions match their words does not need to convince you. Their consistency builds trust before they even speak. The difference is not always dramatic. It is in the small things. Returning messages, keeping promises about time, following through on commitments no one else is watching, respecting feelings as they said they would. Small actions are the test of the words they choose. Pay attention to patterns. Words are easy. Anyone can speak beautifully, but actions are harder. They require effort, accountability, and courage. The person who aligns the two shows you their integrity. The person who relies on words alone shows you where the gap is. And once you see the gap, you cannot unsee it. It tells you who you can trust and who you cannot. Actions speak louder than words, always. And if you let them, actions will show you who someone really is long before their words catch up. Group versus one-on-one behavior. You can learn a lot about someone by watching how their personality shifts, depending on who is in the room. Some people are warm and genuine when it is just you and them. They listen, they soften, they show a version of themselves that feels honest. But the moment they step into a group, something changes. Their voice gets louder. Their tone sharpens. Their attention shifts away from connection and toward performance. And suddenly, you are looking at a stranger wearing their face. The shock of this shift hits harder than you expect, because part of you wonders which version is real. The one who opens up in quiet conversations, or the one who becomes theatrical when an audience appears. It is confusing. It makes you doubt your instincts. But this is exactly why group behavior is so revealing. When people feel watched, they often show the version of themselves they think will earn the most approval. And that version exposes their priorities. Some people treat one-on-one moments as disposable. They are kind only when it benefits them. They share vulnerability to appear deep. They give attention to seem loyal. But in a group setting, where social currency matters more, they shift the spotlight away from you. They interrupt. They downplay your accomplishments. They laugh a little too hard when someone else teases you. They trade your comfort for a few moments of group approval. That choice, subtle as it is, tells you exactly where you stand. Psychologists call this social self-monitoring. It is the habit of adjusting behavior to fit the environment. A healthy version of this is normal. Everyone adapts slightly depending on context, but the unhealthy version is when a person abandons their own values to climb a social hierarchy. This is where masks slip. When someone needs the group more than they value authenticity, their behavior becomes a performance instead of a reflection of character. At the same time, there are people who act the opposite. They remain steady regardless of who is watching. They do not inflate their personality in a crowd. They do not shrink you to make themselves shine. They do not sacrifice kindness for attention. When it is just you, they are present. When it is a group, they are still present. Their tone stays grounded. Their loyalty stays visible. Their identity does not shift with the audience because they are not seeking approval. They are seeking connection. One of the clearest signs of character is how someone treats you when there is social gain at stake. If they defend you in private but stay quiet in public, pay attention. If they respect you one-on-one but dismiss you in front of others, pay attention. If they value your voice in a quiet room but silence it in a loud one, pay attention. These patterns reveal insecurities they do not talk about. They are trying to manage their image instead of managing their integrity. Group behavior also exposes envy. Someone who supports you in private might subtly compete with you in public. They want to appear encouraging without risking their own status. So they change their energy when others are around. They match the room instead of matching the values they claim to hold. But genuine people do not shift like that. They are consistent. They are steady. They treat you with the same respect in a crowded room that they treat you with in an empty one. Their identity is not a costume that changes with the audience. And you feel safe with them because you know you are not being used as part of a performance. When you want to understand who someone really is, do not look only at how they behave with you alone. Look at how they behave when they have something to gain socially. Look at how much they change when attention becomes a currency. Look at how they talk, how they listen, how they treat you when the group is watching. Because a person who is authentic in every setting is rare. And a person who performs in public but changes in private is telling you the truth, even if they do not realize it. Their group behavior is the unfiltered version of their priorities. And once you notice it, you can finally see who is real and who is only real when no one else is watching. Managing envy. Envy is one of those emotions people pretend they never feel, even though it touches almost everyone at some point. You can see it in the way people react when someone else gets an opportunity they wanted. You can feel it in the silence after you share good news. You can sense it in the shift of energy when your life moves forward faster than theirs. And the way a person manages that envy or fails to manage it reveals a level of character that cannot be faked. Most people think envy is loud, but it usually starts quietly. It begins as a small discomfort, a tiny sting when someone you know succeeds. It sits in the mind like a little shadow, whispering that you should have achieved that first, or that life is unfair, or that someone else got lucky while you worked harder. If a person does not handle that shadow well, it spreads. It grows. It turns admiration into bitterness. It turns friendship into distance. It turns connection into a scoreboard. You can see the shock of unmanaged envy in subtle behavior. People who once supported you start making backhanded comments. They downplay what you earned. They compare your success to someone else to dilute it. They pretend to be happy for you, but their eyes look tired, jealous, or threatened. It is confusing because their words say one thing, but their energy reveals something deeper. And once you sense it, you know the relationship has shifted. Some people deal with envy by trying to dismantle what you have. They highlight flaws, question your choices, or analyze your success in a way that feels more like criticism than curiosity. They cannot celebrate your growth because it reminds them of where they feel stuck. Instead of learning from your progress, they try to shrink it. This behavior is rooted in insecurity. They believe that someone else winning means they are losing. They live in a mental world where success is limited, where they must protect their ego instead of expanding their perspective. But then there are people who manage envy with maturity. These are the ones who feel that same sting because they are human, but they do not let it poison the moment. They turn that feeling into inspiration instead of resentment. They congratulate you without hesitation. They ask how you did it because they want to grow, not compete. Their admiration is genuine, their support is steady, and their heart is strong enough to celebrate someone else, even when they are waiting for their own breakthrough. This difference comes from emotional awareness. Psychologists explain that envy is a signal, not a verdict. It tells a person what they value and what they fear. Someone who understands this uses envy as a mirror. They ask themselves why they feel threatened and what they can learn from it. Someone who does not understand this uses envy as a weapon. They let it twist their perspective until every victory around them feels like an insult. You see this clearly in how people treat you when your life improves. The people who clap for you when you rise are the ones who will stay true in the long run. They do not need you to dim for them to shine. They do not measure your life against theirs. They know that someone else having more today does not mean they will have less tomorrow. They see success as something expansive, not something scarce. The way someone manages envy also shows you how they will handle power, success, or stress in the future. Those who cannot celebrate others usually sabotage themselves. They build grudges instead of skills. They waste energy comparing instead of growing. And eventually, they become bitter, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they lacked the emotional discipline to manage their reactions. But the ones who handle envy with grace show you a rare kind of strength. They stay grounded. They stay supportive. They stay focused on their own growth. And when it is their turn to rise, they lift others with them because they never saw success as something that belonged to only one person at a time. If you want to know who you can keep close, just pay attention to how they respond when life gives you something good. Envy is unavoidable, but how people manage it is the real test. Authentically celebrating others, there is something incredibly revealing about the way a person celebrates someone else. Not the polite smile, not the forced congratulations, not the quick comment that sounds supportive but feels hollow. I am talking about real celebration, the kind that comes from a heart that is not threatened by another person's growth. That kind of reaction is rare, and when you see it, you are looking at someone whose confidence runs deeper than ego. Most people like to think they celebrate others well. They tell themselves they are supportive. They say they want their friends to succeed. They insist they are happy for people. And maybe they are, as long as the success feels distant or harmless or not directly tied to something they wanted themselves. But when someone close to them gets the job they wanted, or finds a partner they hoped for, or reaches a goal they still have not touched, the truth surfaces. That is when real celebration becomes a test of character. The shock comes when you realize how many people fail that test. You share your good news, and you feel the energy shift. Their smile tightens. Their voice gets flat. They say congratulations, but there is no warmth behind it. Or worse, they instantly pivot the conversation back to themselves. They tell you about their own plans, their own achievements, their own struggles, anything that recenters them. It is like they cannot stand the spotlight being anywhere but on them. That is not celebration. That is insecurity dressed as politeness. Others celebrate by minimizing. They say things like "you got lucky," or "they guess it is fine," or "they knew someone who did something even bigger." Instead of meeting your joy with joy, they dilute it until the moment feels smaller. This kind of reaction comes from comparison. They cannot hold happiness for you because it reminds them of where they feel behind. And instead of rising with you, they pull the energy downward until the moment loses its sparkle. But then there are the people who celebrate authentically. The ones who light up when you succeed. The ones whose voices get brighter, whose posture shifts, whose energy expands when you share something good. They ask genuine questions. They want to know how you feel. They want to know what happened. They want to live in the moment with you, not outshine it, not shrink it, not redirect it. Their joy feels clean. It feels safe. It feels unconditional. Psychologists talk about something called non-competitive admiration. It is the ability to feel happy for someone without comparing yourself. It requires emotional strength, self-worth, and the belief that life has room for everyone. People who celebrate authentically have this skill. People who cannot celebrate struggle because they view success like a limited resource. If you have more, they fear they will have less. This mindset poisons relationships. It creates distance instead of connection. Celebration is not just about cheering. It is about intention. Someone who celebrates you genuinely is showing you that your wins are not threats to them. They are invitations to grow with you. They do not need to be ahead. They do not need to be the center. They do not need to twist the moment to protect their own ego. They can stand beside you without shrinking. That is a rare strength. And here is the important thing. People who celebrate others authentically tend to succeed more themselves, because their energy builds relationships, their mindset opens doors, their support creates alliances. When they cheer for others, others cheer for them. They live in a world where success multiplies instead of divides, and that mindset becomes a foundation for resilience and confidence. So watch how people respond to your joy. Watch their eyes. Watch their reactions. Watch whether they expand or contract. The way a person celebrates someone else is a mirror of how they feel about themselves. Insecure people pretend to celebrate. Confident people celebrate fully. Authentic celebration is not just a reaction. It is a sign of character. And the people who can do it are the ones you want in your circle when life starts giving you the things you once only dreamed about. Treatment of animals. You can learn more than you expect by watching how someone treats animals. Not just pets, not just the cute ones, but every creature they come across. The stray cat outside a store, the bird that cannot fly, the dog barking behind a fence, the tiny insect crawling across a kitchen floor. These moments reveal something deeper than personality. They show the very foundation of a person's empathy. People like to present themselves as kind. They talk about compassion, warmth, decency. But animals bring out a version of someone that does not care about social points or reputation. There is no reward for being gentle with a creature that cannot praise them. No applause, no recognition, just a raw interaction with something vulnerable. That is why these moments are so revealing. Without an audience, character becomes honest. Some people react to animals with irritation or dominance. They kick at them to make them move. They yell as if the animal should understand their frustration. They treat creatures as inconveniences, as objects to control or ignore, and it hits you because it is so instinctive for them. No thought, no hesitation, just a knee-jerk response that exposes how they respond to vulnerability. They see weakness and feel nothing. Or worse, they feel power. Others go even further. They find enjoyment in causing fear. They tease animals to see reactions. They test boundaries. They provoke for amusement. That kind of behavior is not harmless. Psychologists have long noted that cruelty toward animals often comes from an absence of empathy, a need for control, or a lack of emotional regulation. It is one of the first signs that a person struggles to value anything that cannot push back. But then there are the people whose entire energy shifts when they are around animals. Their voice softens, their movements slow. They notice the tiny signals that the animal gives. They kneel down instead of looming overhead. They offer safety instead of threat. They do not need to post it, record it, or talk about it. They simply act human in the most fundamental way. Their kindness is instinctive, not performative. The way someone interacts with animals also reveals how they view responsibility. A person who cares for a pet consistently shows that they understand commitment, routine, and patience. Feeding on time, giving attention, noticing changes in behavior, making space for something that depends entirely on them. These actions show a level of emotional maturity that cannot be faked through words. It is one thing to claim you are nurturing. It is another to show it daily to a creature that cannot thank you. Animals also expose a person's tolerance for discomfort. When a pet is sick, when a stray is scared, when a creature needs help, You see who steps forward and who steps back. Some people are willing to get their hands dirty, to break their schedule, to put in effort for something that has nothing to give them in return. Others shrug it off because it is inconvenient. That difference is huge. It tells you who will show up when things get messy in life, not just when everything is easy. You also notice who understands boundaries. Not every animal wants touch. Not every creature wants interaction. Someone who forces affection also forces their will onto others in life. Someone who respects distance respects autonomy in general. The lesson carries far beyond the moment. Watch carefully when someone thinks no one is paying attention. How they react to a stray crossing their path. How they handle a pet that makes a mistake. How they behave when a creature needs patience instead of punishment. These small interactions are honest. They are unfiltered. They come from instinct, not performance. A person who treats animals with kindness tends to approach the rest of life with a similar softness. They understand that vulnerability deserves protection. They see value even in what has no voice. They do not need an audience to be compassionate. And when you find someone who shows that kind of care automatically, you have found someone whose empathy runs deeper than convenience. Because the way a person treats animals is not about animals at all. It is about heart. It is about integrity. It is about whether their compassion is real when there is nothing to gain from showing it. Delayed gratification. There is a moment in life when you realize that some people are powered entirely by impulses. They want everything now. Approval now. Pleasure now. Comfort now. They chase whatever feels good in the moment, even if it hurts them later. And then there are people who move differently. They sacrifice short-term thrills for long-term strength. They know how to wait. They know how to sit with discomfort without running from it. That ability, the ability to delay gratification, reveals more about inner character than almost anything else. You can see the difference in everyday decisions. Someone gets a little stressed and immediately reaches for an escape, anything to numb the feeling. Someone else pauses, breathes, and chooses a path that actually helps them grow instead of just distracting them. This is not about discipline in some dramatic sense. It is about understanding the difference between what you want right now and what you want most. The shock hits when you realize how many problems in relationships and careers come from poor self-control. People lose trust because they cannot resist the easy option. They burn opportunities because they chase comfort instead of progress. They damage connections because they react instead of reflect. It is wild how much chaos comes from simply choosing the quick reward instead of the real reward. Delayed gratification is more than self-discipline. Psychologists describe it as emotional foresight. It is the ability to imagine the future so clearly that it influences the decision you make in the present. Someone who waits for what truly matters is someone who can see beyond the moment. They do not crumble under temptation because they are anchored to something bigger than the immediate rush. Look at how someone handles conflict. Do they fire back instantly because it feels good to release the anger, or do they pause and speak in a way that protects the relationship instead of destroying it? Look at how someone manages money. Do they spend for the dopamine hit or save because they want stability later? Look at how someone handles ambition. Do they expect results overnight or invest in something slowly without needing applause right away? Every one of these choices shows how they handle desire and discomfort. Some people genuinely cannot wait. Their whole identity depends on immediate stimulation. They get bored fast. They get discouraged fast. They quit fast. When life does not give them instant validation, they collapse or blame others. They confuse patience with failure. They confuse waiting with losing. And that mindset makes it nearly impossible for them to build anything meaningful. But then, there are the people who treat patience like a quiet superpower. They do not announce every plan. They do not need instant recognition. They are comfortable letting seeds grow underground before anyone sees them. Their consistency comes from trust in themselves, not from the reactions of others. When they delay gratification, they are not depriving themselves. They are investing in a bigger future they have the courage to believe in. The way someone behaves in the waiting period tells you who they are. Some people get bitter. Some get anxious. Some sabotage themselves. Others stay focused and calm because they understand that momentum builds invisibly before it becomes obvious. They do not need constant rewards to stay committed. Their motivation comes from the vision they carry, not the comfort they crave. Delayed gratification also reveals a person's emotional balance. Anyone can act strong when things are easy, but when effort does not pay off immediately, when work goes unnoticed, when progress is invisible, that is when character shows. The people who keep going in those silent stretches are the ones who succeed in the long run. They are not chasing quick highs. They are building something real. So pay attention to how someone handles the gap between where they are and where they want to be. That gap exposes everything. It shows who is patient. It shows who is impulsive. It shows who is consistent. It shows who is only pretending to be. Because delayed gratification is not just about waiting. It is about who you become while you wait. And the ones who choose long-term meaning over short-term comfort are the ones you can trust to build, to grow, and to stay steady when life demands more than impulse. Handling feedback. There is something strangely revealing about the moment someone hears feedback. Not praise, not flattery, but real feedback. The kind that gently exposes a blind spot or shines a light on an uncomfortable truth. You can tell more about a person in that instant than you can in months of casual conversation. Because feedback is a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see their reflection without flinching. Some people treat feedback like an attack, even when it is delivered with complete kindness. Their shoulders tense, their voice rises, their face shifts into defense mode before you finish the first sentence. They cannot handle the idea that they might have something to improve. Their ego feels threatened, so they react with denial or irritation or sarcasm. It is their way of protecting the version of themselves they are trying so hard to believe in. But then there are people who surprise you. You say something meant to help them grow, and instead of shutting down, they lean in, they listen, they breathe, they ask questions, they absorb. They want to understand the message instead of defending themselves against it. Those moments reveal humility, emotional maturity, and a kind of grounded confidence that is rare. The emotional shock comes when you realize how many relationships fall apart simply because someone refuses to hear anything that challenges their self-image. Partners drift because one person refuses to acknowledge their patterns. Friendships deteriorate because someone takes every suggestion as an insult. Workplaces become tense because a single person cannot tolerate correction. It is not the feedback that ruins things. It is the reaction to it. Psychologists say that when the brain receives criticism, even gentle criticism, It lights up the same regions that respond to physical threat. That is why the first impulse is often defensiveness. But emotionally healthy people do something different. They pause between the instinct and the response. They let the discomfort settle without letting it control them. They recognize that feedback is information, not judgment. You can see the difference clearly. Someone who lacks self-awareness will interrupt, justify, explain away every point before you even finish speaking. They need to protect their image more than they need to grow. They think listening equals admitting weakness. But someone mature will let the words land. They will process. They will consider whether the feedback fits the patterns they already know exist. They are not fragile because they are not tied to the illusion of being perfect. What makes feedback so revealing is that it taps into a deeper truth. People who can handle accountability are people who can handle life. They build stronger relationships because they are not ruled by pride. They advance faster because they are willing to improve. They create safer environments because people around them know they will not explode when confronted with reality. There is also a quiet detail people forget. How someone handles positive feedback matters too. When a person receives praise and immediately deflects it, dismisses it, or turns it into a joke, that reveals insecurity. When someone claims all the credit and acts like they alone carried the weight, that reveals ego. But when someone accepts praise with calm appreciation and still acknowledges the support around them, that reveals balance. Handling feedback is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is about having enough inner stability to hear something uncomfortable without letting fear take over. It is about understanding that growth requires friction and that discomfort is not a sign of danger, but a sign of progress. So watch the small moments. Watch the instant after you say something honest. Watch their eyes. Watch their breathing. Watch how they choose to respond instead of how they want to react. Because that choice tells you everything. The people who handle feedback with openness are the ones who grow without needing to brag about it. They evolve quietly. They improve steadily, and they become the kind of people who can face truth without running from themselves. Those are the people worth keeping in your life. Responsibility habits. There is something incredibly revealing about the way a person handles responsibility. Not the big moments where everyone is watching, but the everyday choices that nobody celebrates. You can learn more about someone by watching how they treat their responsibilities than by listening to anything they claim about themselves. Because responsibility is not a performance. It is a pattern. And people cannot fake their patterns for long. Some individuals move through life as if every task is someone else's job. They leave messes for the next person. They wait for reminders. They forget commitments and shrug like it is no big deal. They treat deadlines as suggestions and promises as flexible. They think responsibility is a burden that should always fall on someone who cares more. They act free, but really they are just avoiding the weight that every adult eventually has to carry. Then there are people who carry themselves differently. They remember the things they said they would do even when no one follows up. They notice when something needs attention, and they address it before it becomes a problem. They do not complain about the effort because they see responsibility as part of being someone others can rely on. Their habits are not loud, but they are steady, and that steadiness builds trust in a way nothing else can. The shock comes when you realize how responsibility habits affect every aspect of life. A person who ignores small responsibilities will eventually ignore big ones. Someone who avoids accountability when things are minor will disappear when things get serious. This is not about perfection, it is about consistency. You can almost predict a person's future by the way they handle their present. Psychologists explain that responsibility reflects something called internal locus of control. That simply means a person believes they influence their own life instead of blaming everything on circumstances. People with this mindset naturally act more responsible. They clean up after themselves. They follow through. They own their mistakes. They do not wait for someone else to fix what they could fix themselves. It is not that they enjoy difficult tasks. It is that they trust themselves to handle them. But someone with an external locus of control often avoids responsibility because they genuinely feel powerless. They think life is something that happens to them, not something they participate in. So when things go wrong, they look outward instead of inward. They blame the system, or luck, or timing, or the people around them. Anything but themselves. And when you watch the way they live, you can see it in every habit. Look closely at the small patterns. Does someone return borrowed items without needing to be asked? Do they apologize when they forget something, or do they turn it into a joke? Do they complete tasks only when pressure is applied, or do they take initiative? These details tell you whether they carry responsibility like a badge of maturity or try to escape from it like it is a trap. There is also a hidden truth that shows up in how someone handles their personal environment. A cluttered room or a chaotic schedule is not always a sign of irresponsibility, but how they respond to the chaos is. Some people see the mess and immediately blame their day or their stress or their situation. Others look at the same mess and say, "All right, this is on me," and they handle it. One reaction creates helplessness. The other creates momentum. Responsibility habits reveal character because they require effort without applause. Anyone can look responsible when someone is watching. But the real test is what they do when they could easily get away with doing nothing. Do they take ownership quietly? Do they follow through even when it is inconvenient? Do they act with integrity even when there is no reward waiting for them? The people who embrace responsibility do not just get more done. They become anchors. They become the ones people trust with important tasks, difficult conversations, and honest advice. Their consistency creates stability. Their follow-through creates respect, and their habits show that they are not afraid of life's weight. They are willing to carry it. Because responsibility is not about being perfect. It is about being accountable, and the people who show that in their daily habits are the people who can be counted on when it matters most. Sharing space. There is something almost invisible yet incredibly revealing about the way a person shares space. Whether it is a room, a table, a car, or even a moment in time, their behavior inside that shared environment tells you exactly how much they respect the people around them. Because sharing space is not just physical. It is emotional. It is social. It is a quiet test of consideration that most people do not even realize they are taking. You start to notice little things. Someone walks into a shared room and immediately takes over the energy. They speak louder than everyone else. They spread their things everywhere. They treat the environment like it belongs only to them. They do not ask. They do not adjust. They do not consider how their presence affects the atmosphere. To them, sharing space means others must adapt. Then there are people who do the opposite. They enter gently. They read the room. They sense the emotional temperature before adding anything of their own. They sit in a way that respects the boundaries of others. They keep their belongings contained. They move with awareness instead of entitlement. And something about their presence makes the whole environment feel calmer instead of more chaotic. The shock hits when you realize how much conflict comes from people who never learned how to share space. The person who blasts their music because they assume others can deal with it. The person who interrupts the quiet of a morning with unnecessary noise. The person who leaves a mess behind on a counter because they think someone else will handle it. These actions seem small, but they reveal an entire worldview. A view where their comfort matters more than the collective experience. Psychologists talk about social awareness as a key part of emotional intelligence. It is the ability to sense what others need in a shared environment without being told. And the truth is, some people are naturally aware, while others move through life like they are the only ones in the room. You do not need a test or a study to see the difference. You can spot it the moment you observe how someone handles shared space. Watch how someone behaves in a car with others. Do they adjust the air or the music without asking? Do they rush to claim the best seat? Or do they pause and check in with the people around them before making changes? These tiny choices reveal whether they see themselves as part of a group or the center of it. Look at how someone handles a workplace environment. Do they clean up after themselves in a communal kitchen? Do they speak at a volume that respects the people trying to focus nearby? Do they take responsibility for the messes they create? These are not small courtesy points. They are reflections of how deeply someone understands cooperation. And then there is the emotional side of sharing space. Some people dominate conversations like they are afraid silence might expose something. They talk over others, occupy every moment, and leave no room for anyone else to breathe. Sharing space also means sharing attention, sharing time, sharing the emotional spotlight. When someone hogs that spotlight, it becomes clear how little they consider others. But the people who share space well have a different energy. They make room for others to speak. They notice when someone feels uncomfortable and adjust accordingly. They protect the harmony of the environment because they value the collective experience more than their personal impulses. They know that presence is not just about being somewhere. It is about contributing in a way that does not burden anyone else. The truth is, sharing space is one of the purest tests of respect. No applause, no reward, no audience. Just a moment where you either choose to be considerate or choose to be careless. And people reveal themselves quickly in those moments. Some take more than their share without even noticing. Others give more than they take without needing praise. So pay attention to the subtle things. How someone sits, how someone speaks, how someone moves, how someone leaves a room after they are done using it. These details expose their character in ways their words never could, because the way someone shares space shows whether they understand that the world is not theirs alone. It is a world built with others, lived with others, and shaped by the respect we give and receive in the spaces we share. Reacting to good news. There is something almost magical about watching how someone reacts when good news does not belong to them. Not their promotion, not their achievement, not their moment of luck or victory. The spotlight is on someone else, and that is where you see their true colors start to show. Good news acts like a flashlight. It exposes the parts of people they usually keep hidden. You can feel it instantly. You tell someone you accomplished something you worked hard for, and instead of celebrating with you, their smile does not quite reach their eyes. Their voice tightens, their body shifts. They start comparing or downplaying or redirecting the spotlight. It is a tiny moment, but it reveals a huge truth. They want you to do well, just not better than them. Then there are the people who surprise you in the best way. You share something exciting, and they light up as if it happened to them too. Their joy feels genuine. Their excitement is real. They ask questions. They hype you up. They support you without holding back. You can feel that they are not competing. They are celebrating you because they actually care. The emotional shock comes when you realize how rare pure celebration is. Many people can handle your struggles. They can handle your sadness. They can handle your pain. But your success is where their insecurities wake up, because your good news confronts them with their own fears. Their fear of falling behind. Their fear of being overshadowed. Their fear that your growth somehow shrinks them. Psychologists say this is called upward comparison. When someone sees another person succeed, the brain automatically measures the distance between them. Some people feel inspired by that distance. Others feel threatened by it. And the ones who feel threatened often cannot hide it, no matter how politely they try to pretend. Look at the little details. When you share good news, do they shift the conversation back to themselves? Do they respond with a quick nice and then rush into something negative? Do they question whether your achievement is really as impressive as it sounds? These reactions are subtle signals of envy wrapped in politeness. But the people who genuinely celebrate you have something different inside them. They are secure. They are grounded. They are not worried that your win takes anything away from their path. They understand that life is not a scoreboard with limited points. Your success does not subtract from their potential. And because of that, they can give you their whole heart in the moment. You also learn a lot about someone by how fast they respond. Some people get quiet. They delay. They need time to adjust their ego before saying congratulations. Others respond instantly with joy that does not feel forced. That speed tells you everything about where their heart is. Watch how someone reacts when your good news comes in an area they themselves struggle with. Maybe you found a relationship they have been hoping for. Maybe you got an opportunity they wanted. Maybe you reached a goal they gave up on. This is where their depth shows. The people who can still be happy for you in the exact place where they hurt are the ones with emotional maturity. The ones who feel your joy without letting their own struggles turn into resentment. There is a beauty in seeing the people who clap for you when nobody else does. They make space for your excitement. They encourage you to enjoy your moment. They do not rush to match it or explain it or overshadow it. They celebrate with you because they are not afraid of your growth. In fact, your growth inspires them, but there is also a clarity that comes from noticing the ones who cannot celebrate you. They may not be bad people. They may just be battling their own insecurities. Still, their reaction tells you who can stand beside you when life gets brighter. Some people can only walk with you in the dark. Reacting to good news seems like a small thing, but it is one of the truest tests of someone's character, because anyone can offer sympathy when you are struggling. But celebrating someone else's joy requires confidence, self-awareness, and genuine care. And the people who can do that are the ones worth keeping close.